Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Garen Thomas, and I'm a member of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force. And before we start the panel discussion today, I want to share a message from Joanna Ostrom. She's the committee chair for the DEI Task Force.
Denver, Colorado. I hope you all stayed safe and sane over the past year and a half. The newly formed Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force has been very busy. Greetings from Denver, Colorado. I hope you all stayed safe and sane over the past year and a half. The newly formed Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force has been very busy since we formed 7 months ago, commonly called DEI. We have been meeting regularly to discuss what geothermal rising can do to both evaluate where we are today and improve the geothermal community's culture on DEI. Our first goal was to create a DEI statement that shows Geothermal Rising's commitment to improving diversity, equity, and inclusion across the geothermal community. We successfully wrote and published the statement to Geothermal Rising's website. In case you missed it, here is how the statement reads. Geothermal Rising is committed to improving diversity, equity, and inclusion to provide a brighter future for Earth and all its inhabitants. Our organization and community embrace and celebrate our members' differences. It is a responsibility of Geothermal Rising to encourage and promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. As a global geothermal nonprofit organization, we are committed to connecting the geothermal community. There is more work to be done, and as we expand across markets and internationally, Geothermal Rising will continue to seek equitable improvement to elevate the geothermal community. In addition to writing this statement, the team sent out a survey earlier this summer to determine the overall diversity of our members and to ask what we at Geothermal Rising and the industry at large could do better. Those results will be shared at a panel on Tuesday morning. Don't miss this thought-provoking and informative session. We aren't stopping there. We want the geothermal community at large to be as inclusive and supportive to its members as possible. Countless studies have shown that diverse teams are more innovative, more successful, and create workplaces that we all want to work in. The world is changing fast, and we all know how crucial geothermal is to a clean energy future. It's going to take all of our talents and skills to make geothermal rise to the top as an energy leader.
Hi again, everyone. Again, everyone. So for our panel discussion today, we have five panelists, and 3 of them are in person today, and we have 2 panelists who are virtual. We have Rita Okorafor, Team Nifty. We also have Ben Burke, Ghazali Zadi, and Munez Alamuti. And I'll give them each an opportunity to introduce themselves, starting with Rita.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Dr. Rita Okorafor, a recent graduate from Stanford University. I joined the Geothermal Rising community when I attended one of the GRC annual meetings then, when that was a few years back when it was still GRC. And I noticed that there was a gap in the number of young professionals that I saw in that event. And I wanted to find a way of bridging this gap, trying to bring in more students. And that was why last year I decided to take on the role as the Geothermal Rising Student Committee President. So prior to carrying out my PhD, I worked in the oil and gas industry for 13 years. And I have been an avid member of the Society of Petroleum Engineers, where I was able to help them set up the SPE, Women in Energy Committee, which is currently the SPE, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee now. I'm very passionate about mentorship. I am a DEI advocate, and it's my pleasure to be speaking today with the rest of the panelists. Thank you.
Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim Neefsey from Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. I am a wingman. If you are interested in women in geothermal, please Google women in geothermal. Click join. It takes 1 minute and it's free and it's for life. It's a good organization to belong to. And I'm a strong advocate of that. I started out after college teaching in a girls' secondary school in West Africa. For a couple of years I did that. I moved back to the US. I worked for the Environmental Protection Agency, did some environmental consulting, went to grad school, and then I moved to Lawrence Berkeley Lab for 1 year. And I have overstayed my 1 year by 24. I'm a hydrogeologist and experimentalist, and I'm currently the PI of the EGS Collab project with about 100 scientists. I had to take a look at the authorship for the EGS Collab project today, and I looked for the number of women versus the project itself, and it wasn't as impressive as I had hoped that it would be. So it's something that continually needs work. I became involved in GRC when I started at Lawrence Berkeley Lab. I was working with Karsten Preuss, and Karsten assigned me to be a geotherm, and I've been a geotherm since then.
Thank you, Tim. Ben.
My name is Ben Burke. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Transitional Energy. Excellent. Again, I'm Ben Burke. I'm the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder at Transitional Energy based in Denver, Colorado. Transitional Energy is a majority women-owned, minority-led company that is seeking to repurpose oil and gas wells for geothermal use and co-production, including end of life. Background-wise, I'm trained as a geoscientist, undergrad from Bowdoin College, PhD from Dartmouth College, 3 years in environmental consulting and 15 years in oil and gas before making the jump over to geothermal and into entrepreneurism.
Thank you for being here. My name is Ghazal Izadi. I am a global lead for geothermal and unconventional in Baker Hughes. Basically, we are looking everything on the subsurface from characterization all the way to modeling. We have a multidisciplinary team, and I'm in geothermal since 2012 when I graduated. So my background is applied mathematics. So I was working on the computational modeling, my bachelor and my master. I'm coming from Iran. So I did my PhD in Penn State. I was working on geothermal project, EGS project, enhanced geothermal project in Newberry, which is but it was a very interesting project that I was helping on the geomechanics side to better understand how the role of the natural fractures and heat and permeability on the successful, economical, viable geothermal projects. And when I moved to Baker Hughes, I was working on most of the unconventional fields globally, from North America all the way to Middle East, China, and Argentina. And now, because all of this activity and this moving from fossil fuel to new net zero initiatives, we are very committed to geothermal. We are back and we are developing technology for geothermal. I'm so excited to be here and be in this panel with my panelists. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Muna Salamuti, and I'm a PhD student of geophysics at University of North Dakota. I'm originally from Iran, Tehran. It's my pleasure to be here with you and other panelists. It's been 2 years since the first time that I joined the Geothermal Rising organizations. And from the beginning, I was pretty active in the different studential activities. and I'm privileged to be the current president of the Geothermal Rising Student Committee.
So part of the reason why we even chose to have this panel discussion today is the fact that we all perceive stuff differently and we all perceive situations differently. So we're trying to collectively come together and figure out how moving forward we can share our experiences, our perspectives, and move forward in the industry. And with diversity, you can think of diversity as being invited to a party, equity, the form of transportation into getting to that party, and being inclusion being asked to dance once you're at that party. So we're gonna kick off the panel discussion with questions that are gonna be answered by the panelists, and afterwards we will have a Q&A from the audience. And the very first question that we are gonna ask the panelists today is, what is the importance of DEI? What does DEI mean to you? And we can start off with Tim.
Okay, I really liked your analogy about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I was thinking, so what is the importance of DEI and what does it mean to me? When I was a kid, I didn't know there was a table. Somebody dragged me to school and where they described this table, and I wanted to get to the table. So I kept in school and people kept helping me get to the table. Now I'm at the table and I'm looking around the table and I'm seeing that the table doesn't look like the general population. A lot of people who want to get to the table or don't even know there's a table are not able to get there. And I look back at all the help I got getting to the table, and so DEI means to me is providing that help to get people who want to be at the table to the table.
Sorry. Thank you, Tim. Rita?
Okay, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I have been in several situations where I have been minority in terms of gender, in terms of a person of color. I may talk about my experience later, but being able to see DEI from a more privileged point of view or from a different point of view was what really turned me around in understanding what it is. So to me, diversity in itself is the gift. It's just a gift. Having people of unique characteristics, abilities, it's a gift to the world, to any organization. Inclusion is now a deliberate act to be able to bring people together, to be able to tap what those gifts are in them. And equity is making them not feel one is more important than the other. And this illustration or this definition of the way I see it came into realization last year during COVID. I have 4 kids, 3 of them are girls, 1 is a boy. And my son is very boisterous, he's fun, he is very smart. Allow me as a mom to just keep speaking positively about my son. He's everything, that I really like in a person. And then COVID happened. When COVID happened, all the kids were shut in. He was cut off from his friends, meaning that he had to spend time with his sisters. Now the sisters, the females, the women are the majority in this particular case. They have a preference for the kind of movies they want to watch. They have a preference for the kind of games they want to play. And so my son felt very left out in everything. And the impact on him was he became reserved. He stayed away. He couldn't speak up. His whole behavior changed. All those things that I really liked about him, I couldn't see them in him. And so it made me realize that somebody can be full of talent, ability, can have the ability to contribute. But if you find yourself in a situation where your ideas are not accepted, your gifts are not harnessed simply because the environment does not put in place things to bring them out or to support them, then you lose this whole gift that we have in diversity. And so to me, it's very important for us to be able to bring out the best in people. That's what the whole concept of bringing diversity, inclusion, and equity. Everybody wouldn't be at the same level at every point in time. But like Tim said, everybody wants to get to the table. Some people don't even know that there's a table, right? So we need to be able to do things to be able to make people aware that there's a table and they could get to that point. So that's what diversity, equity, and inclusion is to me. And I feel it's very important if we want to have the best out of people. And if as an organization or a team, we want to do much better, then we need to take these things very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Ben?
So for me, in co-founding Transitional Energy 2 years ago, the three of us who make up that company have been really trying to live diversity, equity, and inclusion concepts from the get-go. It's our table to build, and it's our table to cast the widest net and send out the widest set of invitations, so to speak, to get the best ideas. And of course, in a startup, things are do or die from an operation standpoint, from the standpoint of getting clients, getting things going. So having the best set of data, having the best set of opportunities around us is best made with having the widest and most diverse group. And beyond the organization of the company, we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion from how our projects interact with the wider world. We think about energy equity for those near the wells that we're working to transform. We think about talking in schools young, so that students from all sorts of backgrounds, both near our projects and far, understand what geothermal is. I know that it's an option, and we're not telling this to them, at their 12th grade level or in college or something. We're trying to talk to them when they're young. And then also the idea of a just transition, the equity for workers in the oil and gas space or in the subsurface space, who have very skilled trades, whether they're office-based or field-based, and can have a just transition for them into kind of a new energy, low carbon, zero carbon economy.
So when we are ignoring these three words, right, DEI, first of all, we are really limiting ourselves to cut to access to the talent by 50%. How we can promote better thinking process when we have more diverse group, and it's not only gender related, it's also about the multicultural point of view, right? So I am coming from Iran, totally different culture, and I grew up in the very strong female oriented family. And I really agree with you, Ben, when you said it's this type of message goes from classroom to bedroom. So we need to promote it in the classes, universities, all the way to the workforce place. So I think it helped me a lot to grow, being around a very strong people, having different people to give mentorship to me, and who am I today is because of all those feedback and mentoring that I got.
So let me express my opinion from the students' point of view. To me, DEI means that the voice of the student should be heard. So you, as the student, matter, regardless of your nationality, your race, color of the skin that you have, sexuality, sexual orientation, gender, culture, political belief, and any other differences. What matters is you. You as a student matters. And regardless of all the differences that you have, you should have the same opportunity and same resources as the other student without having those differences have. And if you ask me why it matters because at the end of the day, when students feel that they are heard and everybody appreciate them, recognize them, and they would be, their voice would be heard, then that's the time that the performance level going to be increased. And what decrease is just the level of depression, level of the suicide among the young generation who are the future, our future hope, right? And isn't it that beautiful? Because at the end of the day, what we are looking for is the society which is happy, healthy, trustful, and safe. So to me, it doesn't matter whether you're working or you're studying. DEI matters to everyone.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and ask a specific question to each panelist, and afterwards we'll give at least two of the panelists to address the question. So the first question goes to Ghazal, and Ghazal's question is, what is the importance of international women? What is the importance of international women in regards to the advancement of geothermal energy?
So as I mentioned, I'm coming from science background. So I started with mathematics and computational modeling. And then I decided I need to get some engineering experience. That's how I moved, and I graduated from Penn State in petroleum engineering, but my focus was on geothermal. So one thing was very interesting for me, and I was very happy that happened to me. I didn't choose to study geothermal or be on that path, right? However, when I was looking at where am I and all of these leaders that I wanted to be like them, right? They were, I'm looking at that, okay, so when you belong to something and you feel it, that gives you hope and you can say, I can be that person. So for me, it's amazing that when you're looking at this conference, how many strong female leaders we have in geothermal. So that was the first thing that's really catch my eyes. I said, okay, this is where I wanna be, right? Even though I'm working in the male-dominated industry, right? Oil and gas, when you go to the field, when you go to the customer, you're maybe the only female in the meeting, right? But I really like this conference, this community, and we are getting, I'm since 2009, I'm coming to this conference, right? It's like a family, you know, everybody. And everybody wants to promote you. We were listening to John comment yesterday. We want to grow this pie, right? We are not stealing it. So this is very important. So we are not competing with each other. We want to promote it because there is always a part of pie for all of us. So, I'm very excited to be here and a part of this conference. It was kudos to Toronto and Will that all of this hard work that make that all of us be here together.
The next question goes to Ben. Sorry about that. Is there anyone else who wants to chime in regards to that question? If not, it's okay. The next question goes to Ben. What is the role of oil and gas advocates in regards to DEI?
I think I can broaden that question even a bit more to just say, what are the role of advocates in DEI? And as a white male, I think it is important, it's imperative for those who are in the majority to make space to listen, to make space to make sure that everyone's opinions, everyone's input is heard, whether that's in informal settings or more formal settings within a company, within a professional society, et cetera. So the idea of creating space and listening, I think can be the major role of an advocate so that broad voices are heard as broadly as possible.
Thank you, Ben. Next question goes to Munez. How do we address our unconscious biasness?
This is actually a really great question because I believe that in our everyday life, every time we face each other, we challenge each other and say, you're biased. We think that everybody is biased, but we never think about that we might be biased also, right? So I guess that the important thing at the beginning is that we just think about for a second that what happened if we are really biased. So we can list down all the things that we do or we might like to do when we are biased, right? So when we list them all those activity, then we are facing with such a phrase like, I tend to do something, I prefer this over something else, right? And after that, then we can identify our biases. So then it's very easy for us to understand what would be the consequence of our biases. So what would our behavior gonna change? How our attitude gonna change? So in that case, I can say that I would do this kind of thing. I would behave in that kind of, I have such a kind of behavior. And after that, I believe that as I said, so sometimes when we are in different companies or when we are in schools, there is a kind of a competition between different people, right? So it's a time for us to understand the differences. And based on that, we can understand that what are the things that we feel that people recognize in us. For example, my friend can say that, Munes, we believe that most of the times when you participate in those kind of activities, you have such a behavior. So then in that case, I can get the idea that what would be my behavior? Maybe they're unconscious and I'm not aware of that. So after that, I believe that it would be easy for me to recognize the biases in other people's. What are the things that I don't like to see in the other people? I can list them down. For example, in a society or in a company or in a school, what are the behaviors that I really don't like to see in the other people? I can list them down. And after that, I have such a big list of the behaviors, attitudes, actions. It's the time to think that what can I do? How can I overcome all these challenges? Is there any way for me to overcome these challenges? And it can happen. It would be very easy because after that you have your list ready. It's just taking the action. And it's not, in that case, it's not just the case of the tolerance. It's just about leadership. It's how you can lead and engage the other people and also yourself to go in a direction that would end up with having the diversity and equity and inclusion in any society or organization that you're included.
I also want to share a little bit on that. There was a study was published around this unconscious bias, especially on the hiring process in the companies. So it doesn't matter that the hiring manager is female or male. When they look at the resume and they connect with the male person immediately. So in this study, they cut the name, they just put the bio and the experience of that person and said, now you look at it. So before and after looking at that, it was a totally different list of name was selected for the interview. So I think from the HR perspective and people that are running the company, this is a very important topic, needs to be understand. So we need to be, not because you don't know that person anyway, but this is in your back of your mind that this is how I do this evaluation process. So I think it was very interesting based on what you said. And so I wanted to share that.
Can I chime in on that one too?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So unconscious bias is something, I mean, I guess I have a high level of discomfort, and I saw a TV show once and one of the lines, I mean, this was 30 years ago and it still sticks in my head, where one character says to another, we're all racist, it's just a matter of to what extent and towards who. And that it's like, oh my gosh, I've been trying to look at things and be objective my whole life, and still I have to keep doing that, and I have to keep looking at my approaches and my thoughts and keep self-evaluating because of these unconscious biases. They're part of who we are, and they are uncomfortable. And I don't know, maybe if you're not uncomfortable, you might not be in the right place. I don't know. But it's something that, it's a continuing chore for us to do, excuse me.
Thank you, Tim. And as all the panelists just mentioned, in terms of unconscious biasness, it's something that we all have, and we all have to admit that we have unconscious biasness. And it may be simple as whenever you're interviewing someone for a new job, you don't like the suit that they're wearing, or you don't like the shoes that they're wearing. Maybe something simple as that. It doesn't have to be too deep. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and ask Tim the next question. What is the importance of allies within the geothermal community?
Thanks. So when we talked about this question, we've kicked this question back and forth a couple of times, and the question is, why is it important for men to be allies and mentors to women in the geothermal community? And part of that sat really well with me. Why is it important for men to be allies? And then I got to mentors, and I started having a little bit of a problem with that word. And I looked up, what mentor can mean, and there was a whole long list of things that mentor can mean. And it sometimes, in a lot of cases, it meant that, someone was more, bigger or more powerful, or had something else to offer. And so I kind of had to reinterpret the word to understand it. And so, like I mentioned, somebody dragged me to school, somebody showed me the table, a lot of people helped me to get there. But so I've defined a mentor as someone who openly shares the paths they found and helps open the doors that were opened for them. And when anyone is getting into something new, there are a whole bunch of things that we don't know, we don't understand, we don't know how to get to the table. Well, somebody should be showing us the ways to get to the table so that we can help answer the questions. And so it has been said over and over, having a diverse group at the table, people who want to be at the table, who want to help solve these problems, we're going to get better solutions. We're going to we'll have a lot more fun getting to the answer as well. So I think the importance is that it speeds the transition to this richer environment. When we have people who are allies and who are mentors, we notice that we need a transition. You look around any room you go in, and it's clear there's an imbalance that needs to be fixed. Lots of imbalances that need to be fixed. And so the importance of mentors is to help speed that transition, to help show people the pathways, to help people get to the table that they all would like to be at.
I'll jump into that a little bit as well. I think it's important for mentors and advocates as well to be modeling the behavior for their own peers in how to make space, how to listen, how to mentor, how to teach, and how to be genuine in doing that as well. And it's when other members of the majority see the right behavior, see the modeled behavior that is inclusive and helping to bridge the gaps that Tim was referencing. That's really important.
The other topic that I think it needs more, we need to put more attention to it is what is collaboration means and how we can make it effective. And that comes from how curious we are about the people, how deep we want to understand, how much we want to listen. So be curious about to understand the people, because most of the time collaboration not comes because you know better, because you are personally connected to that person. So these are some of the other examples that really we can promote it as a mentor and as a leader to take action on that. So make sure that we are connected to the people deeply and we are curious to listen to that person.
Okay, next question goes to Rita. And the question is, how have you navigated being the only woman or the only person of color in the workplace or in a group setting?
Thank you, Garen, for that question. So it's usually very daunting at first finding myself as the only woman in a group, or as a person of color, the only person of color in a group. And I have to take time to think of, what kind of actions do I have to take not to feel inferior or to feel left out. So I've, all through the time I worked in the industry, taking on certain leadership positions, I have found that I'm mostly the only female in a room, having to meet with, a lot of my, customers, clients that will be most likely all male, and not only all male, sometimes white male. So this is where I find myself. And so what I realized has helped me is being able to build credibility as a person, because it's possible they might have some unconscious biases, I don't know, but I have to be able to help them to realize that I am not that person that, I don't have anything to contribute, which means I have to show integrity, meaning that anything that I do, I have to do it with excellence to be able to demonstrate that women of color or are able to do things excellently well. I have been able, I put myself in the position as an ambassador for other women, an ambassador for other people of color, and I don't want to let them down. I don't want somebody who has worked with me to later see another person of color or another woman and say, I can't work with this kind of people because of the experience that they had with Rita. So I see myself as an ambassador, and it's my role to do as best as I can. I also take time to observe, to understand who might be an ally to me, who might be a mentor. I am a proud recipient of mentorship and allyship from people that would ordinarily be called white male. I am a proud mentee of to those kind of people. These are people who have supported me, especially in a male-dominated industry. They support me, they mentor me, they teach me, they show me the ropes. When I go out of line, they call me back and tell me this is what I should be doing. So for me, I know it had been a difficult process, but with each time it gets better, it gets easier, knowing that if I'm able to give myself time to demonstrate that I have my technical understanding, I'm a person of integrity, anything that I'm going to do, I will do it well. And I am actually representing other women and other people of color. When I put all that at the back of my head, I know that I have to forge forward to be able to make progress. And I hope to continue doing well in that regard. But it's very daunting.
Thank you, Rita. At this point, we're going to open up the floor for any audience questions. Yeah, sure.
Come to the mic.
Okay.
Right here.
Up to the mic.
To the mic right here. Yep.
But
there are people online who
Okay.
cannot hear you.
Okay.
Yep.
so first off, I just wanted to say that this is really, really powerful. I had never attended one of these talks. And so there was a lot of feelings when I first started hearing all the panel members and everything. There was it hit close to home. And so in thinking, how do you plan to execute your mission? Do you want to look into the drivers that have prevented, a diverse type of setting, or do you just want to go carte blanche and kind of forget about the past and build new? That's my question.
Would you like me to start addressing it, Garen?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Sure, go ahead, please, Rita.
Okay, so I'm going to say, share two stories first. Pardon me that I'm not going to answer the question directly. Again, I'm a mother to 4 kids. My son heard my daughter saying she wanted to be an astronaut. And my son said, you cannot be an astronaut because only boys can become astronauts. My son was 3 years old when he said that. The second story that I have to say is my daughter was enrolled in the daycare and she was 3 years old then. She was the only Black person in the daycare. And somebody said to her one day, don't play with this girl, or told the other girls, don't play with her because she's Black. And what those two experiences taught me is that this issue is more grassroots. It starts very early. And the best approach would be to start addressing it from the children. What kind of images do we show them? When they watch movies, for instance, do they always see that the Black person is cleaning the floor, the woman is cooking, and the boys are the ones going to do hard, interesting stuff? What impressions do we have? Are we speaking to them? Are we telling them how, are we showing them role models of people who are doing things, people who are different, that are, making waves in particular areas? So I think outreach to younger people is very, very important in trying to address this issue. The second thing is that what the Geothermal Rising body is doing is amazing and is excellent. It's trying to collect information to have a basis, because we need to know where we are, to know what are the fundamental issues that should be addressed. And I'm very proud to be part of that task force that will develop the strategy for addressing the issues with regards to DEI. So collecting information about who we are, our demographics, is very important for us to build that strategy and to understand what people feel are issues in an anonymous way, to get that information as to what are the issues that they're experiencing so that we could address them immediately. And then putting in place policies are going to be good. I wouldn't go into those details. I'm sure when the Geothermal Rising DEI task force puts together their strategy, they are going to mention all the policies that will be in place within Geothermal Rising. But we hope that this will also be extended to the community such that they are able to implement similar policies to help keep people that see themselves as minority in race, gender, sexual orientation, that see themselves being left out, that these policies are going to address their own issues. That's what I will start with for now, and I'll leave the other panelists to add on to my feedback. Thank you.
So one of the things that I really would like to mention is about what Rita said. So she said that she's an ambassador. So I believe that each and every one of us should be the representative. If we really believe in this DEI, we should pass this message to everybody else, because this is what really matters. And to be honest, I feel that everybody said prevention is always better than healing. We need to understand what are the roots of the problem. And when we understand what are the roots of the problem, that part of that comes from the awareness and how we can increase the awareness to just pass this message. Everybody should understand that they have the access to DEI. They should know about it, and they should know that they have the resources that they can get the information from. So when we know that, when we find the roots of the problem, we can then find a solution for that. So this is some problem and some issue that everybody should help each other, that we can resolve it. And I'm very hopeful to the future, because I believe that the young generation, they know their rights. They know that they have the support system. So we need to help them. And I believe that this community and these people over in this room, if they just pass this message to just one person, that would be a great thing for all of us.
I think in regards to your question, on the entrepreneurial side with a new company, there is no past for that company. So we work every day going forward, the three of us, the two women who are my co-founders and myself, in casting that wide net. So in that sense, we're only going forward. But we also recognize that we're building this company within a structure, within a society that has structural racism in it, that has inequalities in it. And so working on the policy side and working formally in that sense, as much as we can to help tear down those barriers is important. So in that sense, we're only looking at the past as we build forward. And to echo some of Rita's thoughts, I've got 3 kids, a boy who's 9 and girls 11 and 13. And several times I've heard from those girls, well, Dad, I just didn't do that well on the math test because I'm a girl. And I said, as your scientist father, oh, no, you don't. Don't even start that. So some of those little things, and whether it's your own kids or whether it's kids that you're speaking to as part of a school or part of speaking in schools, it's little things in modeling behavior. It's little things in showing, in demonstrating that whether you're a man or woman who's doing the speaking, that everyone can be good at STEM. Everyone can be what they want to be, and that there is no should around what people should or shouldn't do in terms of career paths.
So in a lot of society, female are relying on male or their husband for a livelihood of their life, right? And this is something that we cannot ignore it. So how we can promote self-expression and self-determination? So I think this is very important, and how we can show that having female in math, in science, in engineering can change their life quality, right? So we need to promote differently to really have access to the more talent pool in order to make this successful. And geothermal is a fantastic story, right? So when you look at from geoscience perspective, most of the geologists that we have are female, right? When you are going to more engineering courses in the college, you see, okay, it's less and less and less. So the way that we need to promote female in the engineering or in the science, we need to make sure that they are adopting with that. There is a lot of people, they think that the world is changing from fossil fuel to new energy. So how we can adopt their skill set and their knowledge to the new future. So all of these aspects, we have a role to play, and all of us at home with our kids, at workforce with our colleague, right? We need to have allies. We need to have the right mentor-mentee relationship to make sure that everything is going promote in the right way. And we will be happy, basically. Thank you.
If I may?
Sure.
I guess I don't want to take the mic out here. I'm very involved in Wing, and in Wing, we try to have conversations, sort of one-on-one, and sort of gradually bring people into a new way of thinking. My question to you is, as I hear you talk about your children who already have biases even at a very young age, I wanted to share something about my own children who are older. Now, and then some positive statement, they call me out all the time on stuff, and they're in their early 20s, and they're very righteous about gender, about sexual orientation, all those things. So, but when they were little, I experienced the same things with them that you talked about. Like they would say, oh, no, that's not for me to do, or I'm going to wear pink, or, whatever it was. But my main question to you is, we go through and we have conversations about subjects that bother us or things that we really like. And it's through that personal connection. I think it was, I can't remember who said it, but it was a personal connection that sort of led them to a better place. Is there any way to sort of expand that conversation beyond the one-on-one? And what would this group recommend we do to get there a little bit faster or a little bit more globally? I really believe it needs a conversation, but could we have a bigger conversation? So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that. And I'm really sorry, but I have to go to prepare something in the other room, in the lunchroom, but I want to hear your answer. So, but I'm going to leave. So I just embarrassed to say that, but I have to go.
Okay, was that question for me only?
No, it was for the whole panel. It was more just to say, is there something beyond one-on-one conversations that we can do to get this message across? and to do it in a way that is personal, because I think it is super personal. You know, the gender issues and all of the rest of the diversity issues are super personal, because it's through those discussions that people recognize their bias. And it's through those discussions that this gentleman felt very emotional, like, wow, this is so powerful. And you need that. But is there a way to do it faster, was my question. Do you see any sort of exponential way to do that?
I guess recognizing that for each organization or each, let's say, school, that's something that we need to consider. We all know that DEI exists, but we never might not be able to see those sections in any, let's say, website, right? So I guess that when we try to introduce ourselves, or when we are trying to transfer a message to the people, this is our mission, for example, the goal of this company is about that. The main purpose of this school or this academia is about this. So they should mention that. What is DEI? And they should mention that DEI matters to everyone. So when we start giving the information in that level, then the people, it doesn't matter if whether they're student or if they're professional, then they understand what DEI means. And then this is the time that they understand and they realize what they can do, or if they can belong to that society, or what steps they can take. So this is, I think that I believe that each organization and each school should have, because I know that majority of the schools in United States have the DEI, but most of the students might not be aware of that. And rather than the cultural activities that the people organize in the schools, they never hear about anything about, let's say, DEI. So I believe that we need to consider that in part of, let's say, our website, our promotional activities on our social media. And this is the great platform, because nowadays everybody uses the social media platform.
Can I add to that? So, everybody takes in their stories differently, or they are moved in different ways. So I would say stories, you know, in schools, in elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, many of these students are encouraged to read. So imagine having to read something that speaks about DEI. It begins to plant a seed into being open, being able to address unconscious bias or even identify them, and being able to see what are the strengths in people and the beauty in diversity. So that's one of the ways that we can do it. The second way would be to deliberately carrying out outreach. So I know, for instance, in this community, they have this Black History Month in February in my children's school. And during that period, all the notable Black people that they can find, they bring them either to show arts, to show science, to talk about an experience, to read a book. And this helps them to understand that just the Black people are not, you know, they are much more than whatever impression they've had before. But this is just a little group. This is just to do with race, and diversity is much bigger than just race. So it's trying to replicate something like that in other areas, you know, talking about disability, talking about gender, etc. So trying to replicate that. What else comes to mind? Specifically for my children, my daughter, I asked her to help my son with his math homework, and she's such a great teacher in math. And I'm sure that experience for him would help him know that women can know math to start with. Women can be great mentors as well. And tomorrow, when he sees another woman somewhere, he's not going to just judge that she's inadequate or unable to be what she wants to be. Yes, I have those conversations with them one-on-one in our family. And I do hope that similar things are being done in different homes and even in the schools themselves, because these are the people that we want to start reaching to be able to make that difference in the near future.
Can I add to that as well? At Lawrence Berkeley Lab, where I work, we have a diversity and inclusion program that's been developing and is increasing in its presence. What that does is it puts ideas out, it puts thoughts out, it puts discussions out in front of people. But one of the things that the questioner asked was, how do you deal with the personal aspects of that? Because no one is going to stand up in a room full of their bosses and colleagues and admit some terrible flaw. I mean, there's personal things that some of these things are very deep seated and have to be dealt with. But what I notice happening is that, you know, these discussions actually go out to lunch with the people as well. And so the personal aspects, you know, amongst friends, or, you know, further discussions about these at home really tend to help address the, you know, the deep-seated part of this that's in all of us. And so I'm not always a fan of these big programs and things like that, but I see it working both, you know, large programmatically and then addressing the personal level as well.
I have a proposition coming to renewable space from oil and gas industry, being there for 20 years, having high ESG standard where diversity and gender diversity is one element, is ultimately your license to operate. So looking at GRC, looking around the room, I was surprised and shocked that for the gender diversity, I couldn't count on my fingers how many gender diversity members were there. I was really surprised. Last week, I was at the offshore wind show. There were 6 people on the panel, all men. It would never happen in oil and gas today. So the proposition I have is, again, how can we accelerate as a community? We're actually quite small, and I learned about Wing yesterday and I became a member. And so, but there are so many communities in the energy sector, call it fossil fuel, called offshore wind, Wing. Can we do something to collaborate further? Can we do something to get that discussion going at a much wider level, sort of going with some of those communities together to panel sessions, to the discussions, and ultimately learning a lot from oil and gas? Because in the oil and gas, people that still think that they have a long way to go. But what I'm realizing, maybe I'm wrong, but that's my impression, is that actually we have much further to go in the renewable space. And for some reason, we think as corporate that as you enter the energy transition, there's a lot of female leaders driving that transition, but it doesn't necessarily penetrate throughout. So it's actually even less diverse from a gender perspective as an industry. So what can we do? I want to ask you guys, what are the 3 things that you think we can do here in the next few days to accelerate that? And again, what can we learn from other parts of the industry?
Okay,
as far as Wing is concerned.
Let me address that. You know, I worked with the Society of Petroleum Engineers, Women in Energy then, and we developed a 4-point agenda of how we wanted to transform the industry. One of the things we did was female representation was very important. And we wanted to ensure that all panels would have at least one woman who was competent enough to be there. And to even address that, we needed to know who those people were. So we had to reach out to their database to request for them to identify their, what their competencies were and their willingness to participate in panels. So we created a database for that. And whenever there's any event, we go back to that database and we contact certain people. Oh, we have this panel, it's, let's say, on CO2, and we know you're an expert in this field. Would you be willing to speak on that panel? So that was one of the things we did. Female representation was very important. The second thing we did was we had to say leadership training. We needed to train this set of people to understand how they could contribute, because, you know, I will speak specifically for women. Women have this they are more risk averse than than men. This is what has been found out, and they are really bogged down with other domestic responsibilities. These are very heavy on women, and so we are trying to help them understand how can they manage their time, how could they develop those leadership skills, how could they take more risk, how could they balance, every other thing that they're doing. So there were leadership programs specifically for that. The third thing we did was to liaise with other bodies that were advancing in that area, such as there was Catalyst, there was Pink Petrol, then now we have it as Ali. So we partnered with those people who had advanced in this area to take learnings from them and be able to transfer it to the Society of Petroleum Engineers. So there were 4 things we did. The 4th thing was outreach, which I have talked about a lot. But now as Geothermal Rising, as a body, we could do the same thing, ensure female representation or representation across different diverse groups. Second thing is building them or building competency, building leadership skills, particularly to certain groups of people. And thirdly, to actually partner with those organizations who have gone ahead, because they will have a larger database of certain things. Some people who are members of Geothermal Rising may not know much about WING, but are already members of Society of Women Engineers, Catalyst, etc. And so we could always expand our reach towards them and then bring them, to contribute towards Geothermal Rising.
So GRC 2025 will look very, very different. Is that what you guys are?
It's very possible. So what you see now in the oil and gas industry is efforts that were put in many years ago that are beginning to show fruit.
No, it's great, and thank you guys for organizing the panel, for contributing. And I think it all comes down to each one of us doing our part. I just had a note from my HR department. We're looking to bring the teams and diversity, and they just got me 10 candidates with no diversity and said, please go back.
Exactly.
I'm not looking at that list until I
Yes.
have that diversity.
Exactly.
So hopefully we'll collectively impact that. But thanks again for the panel.
I like your no more mammals.
That was a very great comment. And one more thing to share. I think we need to be very bold about what we want. We need to get support from the competent leaders that can represent us. Otherwise, I'm sorry, you are standing over there. But I fully agree with what you said and sharing that experience, because I have a similar experience. So I feel what you said. So I think we need to change it. That's us, all of us.
One of the things that Wing is doing right now is putting together some trainings, and I know there's a lot of information on the web and YouTube and a lot of very good information, and Wing is trying to pull some of those things together to help disseminate and teach.
Hi. I'm here as well. I'm here as a sponsor, but I actually had a question about, I wasn't sure. I actually heard Rita just mention disability. Do you, as far as your DEI, do you represent disabilities as well?
So yes, the DEI task force is also looking at disabilities as well, to be able to take that into consideration, both physical and non-physical disabilities, and to be able to address the issues that people with such disabilities may have.
Okay, and I only mention that because I'm here and I have epilepsy, and I find it interesting that 5 years ago when this started, I had a great job and everything, and then went on multiple, like about a dozen interviews, and went all the way through to let's get your paperwork going, let's get your parking permit, and then I would tell them, and suddenly it would become oh, you know what, and a variation of reasons that they couldn't hire me, and that's hard. So I went on disability. Now I'm here and everything's great and everybody loves me until either I or my husband mentions that I have a disability. And believe it or not, people speak very slow to me after that, or they completely discount me. And it doesn't matter that for 23 years, I have been the person behind my husband's excellent knowledge. I've done most of the reading and the fact checking and the research for him. He is the brains, he is the face of our company, and I'm the woman behind him. And I don't mind that, but DEI, if you're really about diversity, equity and inclusion, then I think everybody deserves that. And just because I don't have a physical issue, I'd like to know that inclusion means inclusion. Make everybody count, every voice heard. And I think that's important because I'm a member of WING now. And, women in geothermal, I may not have an advanced degree. I do have a bachelor's of science, but I'm just as much a part of this.
You don't need to have one.
No, I don't need to, but I like to. I read probably more white papers. I'm a bigger dork than most of the people here. I'm a nerd and proud of it. But I like the idea of DEI. I like the idea that there's people out there making sure that every voice is heard. And my voice may not be as awesome as everybody else's, but it's still a voice. So just wanted to make sure that you guys are aware of that. And I'm very proud of you. It's a great panel.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing this. And we would also like to hear from you, even perhaps after now, if you could share with us how we could do better, to be more inclusive of everyone. So we would love to hear from you, your perspective.
And thanks for your comment on that. That was actually a question that we wanted to put to the panelists if their time permitted, but thank you very much for your input on that.
So my question evolves around privilege and exposure to STEM. And I'm asking what I want to know from, I'll let you guys decide who answers, is how, if I can look back and know how my privilege influenced me getting into STEM. My father was a psychologist. He worked in academia. So I was exposed to science very early on, and the university I went to shared the same building as the geology building. It was the Rock and Rats building. I was doomed, or my parents were doomed for me going into geology. But the university that I went to had a program for BIPOC children or BIPOC teens to get exposed to geology, because at that point in time, seeing people of color in the geosciences was incredibly rare. And it's because, at least in New Orleans, which is where I grew up, and I went to the University of New Orleans, getting exposure to geology was very difficult. There are no rocks. You have to drive 10 hours to see rocks. So if you're going to get, young students of color involved, you have to actually physically make it happen. And we had people within our faculty, my dad's best friend, who made it happen. So what is your experience with privilege in terms of STEM, not just geosciences, but STEM? Because that's a really, if we want to get more people, more diversity, I think we have to start young and exposure. So I'd like your comments on that, please.
Well, I agree with your statement. I think that we have to start young. I think that, we've heard stories of our children and their biases, and we need, I think Ben was mentioning going out and talking to elementary schools and talking about science and talking about geothermal. And I think that these things are key, and that we can all do that. It's not hard to call up an elementary school and in your neighborhood and tell them you want to talk about this, and go in and, or talk to your children's teachers, and they typically welcome these things. But just being exposed to a lot of these things is a way. That's where you find out there's a table, and it's the exposure, and it's really critical that we all do our part to expose people to STEM. And I agree with you're not limiting it to geothermal. It's, you go and you talk to an elementary school and you want to talk about science, because you don't know which way these kids will go or want to go. And, it's just important that they see that there is a table there, or multiple tables, and that they might want to get to.
I'll add to what he was saying. And when it comes to really to the structure around reaching out at a broad level, and that's where GRC, and that's where every professional society in the sciences can reach out at the broad level and make those broad, whether marketing, getting the broad message out there, but the individual touch, so to speak, the getting out there in one-on-one into the classrooms is so important. And I think that can be done through regional associations. In Denver, there's the Rocky Mountain Association of Geologists, and they've got a program within that to reach out to talk about geology, but also STEM in general, all the physical sciences. And so that a national organization can have that national reach, local organizations and individuals can have that local reach within a given region.
And I want to add to it because we see it not only at a very younger age, right? But even when you go to the university, right? The education system here is that you can change your major, right? So you go and you select, for example, mechanical engineering. After 2 semesters, I said, oh, I don't want to do it. So again, for me, it's the experience in life was showing me that, okay, you need to have a role model, right? Because how you select who do you want to be, right? So who is your role model that you introduced from when you're very young, right? And how you expose different, and we don't need everybody to have PhD. We don't need everybody engineer or geologist, right? But everybody has their own talent and they can find a way, but how we can include them, right? As a multidisciplinary team that can help us to be successful. In some society, it's very defined. For example, in Iran, either you need to be an engineer or doctor. There is no other choice. Otherwise, you are not good enough. But that's not the right mindset, because you need to choose who you want to be, right? And do it till end. So, and for me, it's very important that we select the right role model and let the kids or younger folks select who they want to be, right? And be successful. And thanks for the question. It was very good.
Okay, please let me add a few things to that, and let me not put geothermal rising in a very tight corner. So we need to take the knowledge to certain places. When I was growing up studying science, I never got into a lab, but during the time for the exams to go into the university, we had to do practicals as part of the exam requirements. So I haven't seen a test tube before, I haven't seen a beaker and all of this, and then they just arrange something, they bring some experts in a week before the exams, and we are supposed to learn, know how to run experiments, pass, and then go. So I feel that as a body, we look at the fact that there might be some schools, there might be some places where they don't have access to this information, and we could try to bring information to them. Some people might be studying something about rocks and will never see rocks, but if we could get samples of rocks for them, put in their schools, it will help the professors in teaching them, in being able to explain to them. And if we want to bring it down to younger levels, it's also something that we could do. So I feel that for areas where it's going to be a challenge, we can provide support as much as we can. You know, if it's something that is within our abilities, we just take a case study. We want to see how this impacts people's learning. I used to be involved in what they call the Energy for Me, where I reach out to younger children and I'm able to teach them density using things that they know from home. Take oil, take water, put it together, we mix, we play with it, honey, ducks, and all of that. And they're beginning to see science in play. And if we're able to do these things in more areas, people will realize, children realize that science is not something so complicated, but it is something that is around them, is part of them, and they can do it and they can understand it. And that's how we help them to overcome the fear of STEM, to get more people involved And again, anything we do today is for the future. In the end, we will see the benefits being reaped for, we'll have more people interested in science and consequently geothermal energy.
I think when we talk about the issue of inclusion for women in particular, it's hard to disassociate that with the issue of childcare, because women end up taking on the responsibility of childcare in many circumstances disproportionately. As an organization, have we considered having childcare at conferences? An idea.
So I don't know who the question is addressed to, so we need the organizers, but let me say something. I went through an interview quite recently, and no, that wasn't recently. I was still nursing my baby at that point in time. And it was a very strenuous 2-day interview. And I felt that if that organization had asked me anything about how was I managing my 2 days while nursing a child, it would have made a lot of difference. Just ask. And if the organization had taken the step further to say, okay, we would provide you with some saving, something to help you to, pay for childcare, it would have even been much more, like, I wouldn't have thought twice about choosing that organization to work for. So I'm just trying to re-echo your question about inclusion and how, this body can consider something about childcare. In this year's ATCE, the Society of Petroleum Engineers ATCE, there were very few women participation in Dubai. I reached out to a couple of women and I asked them why weren't they able to go. The highest reason they gave me was that they didn't have anybody to take care of their children at that point in time. It was very far for them to travel, so they would need to think about childcare. So I'm just trying to re-echo the fact that this is a very, very important thing. If people want to see more participation by women who are burdened by domestic things, childcare and all of that, this is something that needs to be taken care of, both in organizations and in conferences. But we could take it as feedback as I'm a member of the DEI task force, I could take it back to the task force and ask them to look into it.
Thank you for your question. I think it brings up a larger issue around the arc of women throughout their careers in STEM in general. At present, from something I read in the New York Times last week, there are 55 to 57% of all college students are women. So 10 to 15% more than men. But as women go through their careers, you see disproportionately, absolutely, whether it's childcare or other aspects of life, women choose to leave the workforce at much greater rates than men. And looking at the structural reasons for that and trying to address that. And I think, to your point, childcare is one of those major ones. But trying to make sure that we have a diverse workforce and a gender diverse workforce means we in STEM in general, of course, we can't just pop into these the positions that we have. We need degrees, we need study, we need experience. And so you can't just put someone into that position. You have to keep that person in that position throughout a career. And so I think you've brought up a larger point that's really important that can be addressed through, should be addressed by individual companies, by professional societies, including GRC.
May I make a comment, please? Okay. Thank you for this topic. This is very, very interesting for me personally. I grew up in India, which is a very highly patriarchal society. And I spent some years in the US before my company moved me to Indonesia. For the last 7 years, I've been based in Jakarta with my family. And we were exposed growing up to the man being the head of the home and running and controlling everything. And so as boys growing up in such a culture, it seemed like the natural thing, okay? It seemed like it. But as I grew older and having become a man of faith, I realized that we are all created in the image of God, and so we are equal, man or women. So I decided personally that at least the change has to start with me in my own family. So I made a special determination to treat my wife as if she was equal or higher, in a way, looking up to her and putting her on a pedestal in front of the children and praising her and so on. So that is a personal thing that I did. But interestingly, I find that the children pick up on that. And so they treat their mom with deep respect and love and so on. I have personally tried very hard to treat the people, women in my life with the same level of respect. As I said, I live in Indonesia now for the last 7 years. And my wife and I have taken in a lot of kids, college students from Africa, Nepal, and other places like that, and tried to make them feel like we are there for them. We are their parents, so to say, and have adopted them. We have about 40 kids, believe it or not. They all call us uncle and aunt. So that's something we did on a personal level to help people to understand that women are just as valuable and as competent as men. And so this is something that I would like to basically say that it should start from within, from us, in our own families and in our own circles. You know, I deal as a sales manager for all of Asia, Australia, and India. All those societies are very, very men-dominated, especially Northern Asia, like China, Korea, and Japan, and so on. Very much strongly men-dominated, but for us to be able to show them clearly that we value our women just as much has been an excellent experience for me personally. And we work a lot with people from Iran. A lot of Afghan refugees come to Indonesia, and we select the women specifically and the girls to train them, to help them to get education. We started a school there with the primary purpose of giving them an opportunity because they're equally brilliant as the guys, as the boys. So we've selected especially these women, these young girls, to help them. So we've tried to do our part in the region where we are. And I think all these changes that we are talking about, I'm very, very happy to hear that, because this topic, believe it or not, will not make it into an agenda at a conference in most of those countries. But here it is discussed openly, and I hear all these voices speaking into it. So it's an amazing experience for me personally to be a part of that. I wanted to say, I'm very sorry to hear about the experience that Ms. Christie had here. It really breaks my heart when people discriminate based on some perceived ideas and so on. So I really want to tell you personally that I feel for you. Okay, that's all I wanted to say, just a comment, no questions. Thank you for listening.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Jerry, and I use he, him as pronouns. And I have some anxiety around public speaking and disclosing my identity in these professional settings. So I hope you don't mind that I wrote down my somewhat lengthy question and my shaky voice. Firstly, as a queer native, despite holding cisgender male, white, and able-bodied privilege, I can't tell you how impressed and thankful I was by both the pronoun discussion and the land acknowledgement from Amelia in the plenary session, and for this panel itself. DEI is both an important issue and also a hot topic in most industries today. Unfortunately, some efforts around it are just performative. For example, oil and gas companies are frequently promoting their increased progressiveness, some more than others. But as a queer man that is very proudly and active in LGBTQ plus activism in Oklahoma, but also has a petroleum background in school without a real mentor in the energy industry, I faced explicit discrimination beyond just implicit bias. There are issues for all identities, including those around race and gender, which are all important, but are there any future short or long-term plans to actively move forward with your efforts specifically for LGBTQ plus folks beyond engaging in more conversations and promoting awareness, which is an important first step, of course, and I do very much appreciate.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. I think I was very impressed with our leadership team and CEO when they built this group for that we are members, right? And we have like a monthly meeting to discuss about how we can make change. What is our voice, right? What do we want to raise? And I mean, in Baker Hughes, which is an oil and gas company, right? And having these teams and sitting together every month to discuss about, and most of the members are not part of that group, right? But everybody wants to learn and raise what matters for others and how we can be better. So I think change is happening, right? But it's how we can make it faster, because I don't think it's in the right rate at the moment. In some societies, you see that the change is rapider, but still in oil and gas, we have a lot of opportunity to change things. And thanks for sharing.
So what I really believe is that, I mean, I really moved by the things that you said. And what I believe is that what we can think about is having like, let's think about like having a different brainstorming sessions, right? Because imagine about the conference itself. So it started from, let's saying, what would be the topic? So people send their topic, and based on those topics, then they have different sessions. And then for those sessions, they invited the speakers. And now today, we thought that we included everything, right, for this panel, but it's still there are the things that we cannot touch. And today we heard different stories from the things that we should consider, and they're really serious because nobody should be excluded, right? And everyone matters. So I believe that for a long-term plan, we need to have like different sessions, and the voice of the people should be heard. Like, what are your problems? And because, for example, if I'm not, for example, if my color of the skin is not Black, I don't know what are the challenges for the Black people, right? So we should have like some people around us who can explain us about like, what are the challenges? What can we do? We should brainstorm the ideas about that. How can we organize the things and how we can overcome to the challenges that they have. And in that way, we can help them better. Or for example, for LGBTQ, which is like, I know that they face so many challenges, and we didn't even touch the topic today because we are still like always talking about the problems of the women because still we are struggling. But I believe that LGBTQ is like a big family, and we need to consider all the requests. And the thing is that we should hear their voices, correct? And for that, I believe that we need to have a different session. People with disability, we need to hear their voice. I'm pretty sure that if we have a session for them, there would be more people that they can express their opinion, they can express their challenges. I'm sure that they are not looking for sympathy, but they want that their voice would be heard.
Okay, let me add a bit of comment. Thank you, Mones, for touching on that. So the DEI task force went ahead to gather from some information, and in the survey that was sent out, they were hoping we could get people who are willing to speak out. So the truth is, it's difficult to get people to speak out, especially in the LGBTQ community. It's hard because there's still stigmatization to many of them, and I'm sure that many can attest to that. So we are still hoping that people will be willing to talk about their experiences, and we also have listeners who wouldn't judge them and who wouldn't make them feel stigmatized. We are brainstorming ideas on how to get this to work. We will try to leverage what some organizations have done to be able to reach out to this group of people, get them to share their stories, etc. But I think that it takes the individual to be able to feel safe, to be able to say, okay, I'm willing to share my story, how I feel, and hope that nobody looks at me differently after I have shared my story. So we are still, this is still a work in progress, but we hope to get there someday, as soon as possible. So that's what the DEI task force will be looking at.
Thanks, Rita. This is
Joanna Ostrom. So I'm the task force chair for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion group. And we're a relatively young organization. We've only been meeting for about 7 months. And so we're still learning what we can do better. We first lashed on the idea of having data. So asking all geothermal members to fill out a survey and self-identify if they were willing. And so we could get an idea of who our members were, and so we could understand the diversity as a whole, and then ask for feedback. So were there instances where you weren't comfortable at our events? And we got some interesting feedback, and we're going to take that and do better at future events. So we're really open to hearing from everyone and their ideas and issues they might have, or ways that we can help. And it's an open organization. So if you want to join and attend our monthly meetings, we'd love to have your feedback. And we want to make sure that the Geothermal Rising community is comfortable for everyone, and we all feel equal, because truly we want geothermal to succeed. Every single person in this room thinks that geothermal, is the energy of the future, and we got to have everybody's input to get there. It's going to be a team effort, so it's really important that everyone feels included in that idea and that group. So I'm open for any comments if you're willing to share. Will Pettit, I think his emails, he's on the task force with us. My email, I think, is also on the website too. So we can just get everything together and hear from everybody, and we can do better. So no questions, just a comment.
Hi, everyone. My name is Peyton Bainbridge. I go by she, her, hers. Those are my pronouns. I have two questions, actually. One is more of a comment. For me, since I did show my pronouns, one thing that disheartened me already, because this is my first geothermal conference, was that not a lot of people actually have the pronouns listed. And that really hurts me, because I've heard some comments about people drawing pictures instead. So one of the things that just really bothered me, and I wanted to bring up, since this is a proper place to say it, is just pronouns need to be given, and not given by force, but more or less honored and respected. My first comment, though, is since I am so young and I am not a graduate or a student, I was wondering for some advice from the panel and as well people on Zoom. What do you give for young professionals in situations where, me being a Gen Z amongst a boomer or some millennials, how would you go about establishing yourself as a serious professional, but also advice for expanding your career and making sure that you're respected on sites?
I think no matter, I'll address the second part. I think no matter who you are, doing your work with credibility, and Reed had referenced that earlier, but having your narrative straight, whether it's a technical story or whether it's a softer story, depending on what the issue is at hand, but understanding where there's uncertainty in your work and where there's not uncertainty, and being willing to say, I don't know, in certain circumstances. Folks never like to see someone who says, yes, 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 I know everything, and then you get out beyond your skis, so to speak. And just probably that is the single biggest thing I think you can do to build credibility, is to know what you know what you don't know, and be willing to say that as well. I think that's it.
So I also would like to add, I think Rita mentioned integrity, right? And collaboration. So how are you willing to work with other people? And it also improve your self-esteem. Also make sure that, we need to make sure that we are promoting people, right? So we don't want to bring people down, because if the trust is breaking, right, it's not gonna help us at all. So I think promoting people and really moving toward this type of effective collaboration is one of the way that you can grow and you can help other people grow, and that's a win-win for everybody.
Thank you so much, guys.
And I would just like to address the comment that you made. And in regards to the pronouns, we did talk about it before the conference actually started, but it wasn't talked about far in advance, so there wasn't a place on the badges for us to include the pronouns. But we did say that if anyone was willing, or if they wanted to, they could write in their pronouns on the badge. But I would say definitely that's something that we're going to be looking at for the next conference and going forward. Thanks.
Hi there, Roshan Ravankar. Just one comment and a suggestion since it was asked here. One comment was growing up in India, I was always taught, of course, India is a very diverse country in itself. You guys probably are aware of that, not just racially, just culturally and language and everything. But growing up, it was always imbibed in school that there is unity in diversity. And the fact that diversity brings differences, it's not a bane, it's a boon in a sense that it's really helping to be together and unified. So I feel that sometimes this group or groups as such seem like we are asking for rights or asking for equality. I think it should be seen the other way around, that it's more of a benefit for everyone involved. So that's just a comment I wanted to put across, that there is unity in diversity, and it's not to diversify or separate it. It in fact brings people together. A suggestion that I have is, and this is based on some of the stuff that some of the corporates in Silicon Valley and the like are doing, is they have mandatory training sessions and mandatory questionnaires. So you go through online training and answer questionnaires for DEI, diversity, inclusion, and equality. And I think that's a suggestion for GRC, is that maybe every member who joins you have some sort of a training, so that this discussion goes beyond this room, and it's not just the same people talking in the same group and coming up with ideas. It's every single member who joins the group goes through a 20-minute training or a 30-minute training with a questionnaire. So, and I think there's a lot of questionnaires that are available out there, so it shouldn't be too difficult to put one together. So that's just a suggestion. Thank you. And thank you for putting this session together.
Thank you for that feedback. It's noted. I've taken it down.
Hello, speakers. My name is David Breckner. I'm not actually in the geothermal industry. My background is in museums as a museum professional. My museum, Imperial Valley Desert Museum, is just 90 minutes down the road, actually, 90 miles down the road. We're in Imperial Valley, where we serve a heavily Hispanic as well as indigenous-based population. And one thing that we see as trusted educators and advocates within our community for outreach is a general fundamental lack of understanding about what geothermal actually is from the K through 12 level. We have kids coming in here who ask, is the smoke coming off those plants, is that pollution? Do geothermal plants cause fracking and earthquakes, and anything in between? Has there been much consideration or thought regarding collaborations with others in the industry to get these messages out there so we can really push the envelope, and what resources are available for institutions like my own?
When in Oklahoma, we saw these big earthquakes that through the wastewater injection. If anybody remembers that, where a lot of people started to think about, because then they wanted to ban the fracking, right? So this is because of the oil and gas that we are deform the fractures, and then we see earthquake, right? So there was a lot of session that we had with the community and the policymaker to educate them how you create earthquakes, right? And then what we are doing in oil and gas on the stimulation or fracturing of the well-bore fractures, how you can you really make it like a 5 to 6 moment magnitude, right, for that earthquake? So we started to think about from the technology point of view that when we put like a traffic light concept together, right? So you are knowing what you are doing, you understand the physics behind that, you monitor the process, right? And then you have a prevention plan for that. Right? So you have a decision-making plan. So for geothermal, we are, I think, from the service company, operator, academia, we are engaging with our community, and people are really care about this stuff. The good thing is geothermal is green, so we don't need to defend that, right? But in terms of the hazard, geohazard point of view, you saw that in France, we had an earthquake a few months ago, right? And they had to shut down the whole geothermal project, right? Because we don't really put the right monitoring, right, in place in order to understand that what is happening. And a very good question. So you are talking about the STEAM, but all the question that the kids are asking, right? Maybe we need to have this 101, geothermal 101, and send it to everybody. What does that mean, right? Even in the same company, people may not know that what is the geothermal team is doing versus the oil and gas team is doing, right? So that those type of education is really necessary. And I found a lot of good video, geothermal 101, that DOE and other teams put together to educate people. So I think that was another useful resource that we can use it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I can add something to that. You're very grateful to the support that Geothermal Rising and DOE provided for us as a Geothermal Rising Student Committee, because with the help of them, we could have organized and we initiated the regional chapter. And one of the main goals for doing that was approaching to the young generation and having outreach. So these kind of approaches would help people. So and it doesn't matter where part of the world you belong to, but you still can learn from the very childhood. We can provide you the resources that you understand about what's happening around the world. And for DOE, we have during the last year, we had almost 2 competitions, which the main purpose of that was raising the awareness among the young generation. And actually so many high schools participated in that, which was the Geothermal Collegiate competition. And so many high school people needed to approach to the people. And one of the main sections for that competition was that you need to communicate with the community and the stakeholders and engage them and let them know what's happening. So you should have a plan for that. And I guess that in a long term, having a plan like this and competition like that and having the organization like the Geothermal Rising Student Committee as a part of the Geothermal Rising would help the students and the young generation from the childhood or early age to understand better about the geothermal.
Hello, Jackson Grimes with Reykjavik University, and I wanted to initially direct this question at Mr. Burke, just because you said your company has some focus on dealing with the communities that are directly affected from these well sites and developments. And so a lot of y'all today are geophysicists, geoscientists, and I'm more interested in the social side of it. And so what is the research that we should be doing to help advance these projects with DEI in the field as opposed to just workplace?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it's thinking about energy equity, which is what you're getting at, I think is a really broad topic, and it's so project specific. And so it's making sure that that communities that you're working in or plan to work in, understanding and communicating what the effects of the operation will be, and from an operational standpoint, where are trucks going to move, but also where's the energy going to go? How much of it is used behind the meter? How much of it is it used in front of the meter into the grid? And will it be going to, and who will that grid be going to? Is it going to utility? We work a project that's in one of the small basins in Nevada near an Indian reservation. And so making sure that the community there understands what we're doing, has a part in it. And so we're reaching out to not only the K through 12 within that, the regional community outside the reservation and inside it, to try and just broadly get our message across that we're here, this is what we're doing, this is the type of energy we're after. Does that answer your question?
In a sense, and it's just, I see a lot of the discussions and stuff from the literature that I read, it's only dealing with situations after the fact, and there's been failures by the engineering companies or whoever is doing the drilling and working with those communities from the get-go. It just seems to not happen yet. So what can I do to support, studies that would convince people that this needs to be done in the preliminary stages rather than post?
Yeah. I think really it comes down to communication and communicating what the operation is, what it's going to do, that this type of power is baseload and that it's renewable. And that when we're dealing with steam and ORCs and things like that, that these are closed loop systems that have no emissions. And of course, other aspects, sound can be an issue as well. So understanding all aspects of the operation and how it impacts. If light pollution might be an issue there. So it's really just engaging broadly, I'd say, and as proactively as possible. And so that, as you say, you're not doing kind of cleanup afterwards. If there's an operational challenge, if there's a spill of some sort, just making sure everyone's engaged. And that, certainly coming from oil and gas, geothermal isn't as well known. So folks see a rig and think oil and gas. They see steam and think smoke. And so proactively getting the word out that this is what geothermal involves. It involves subsurface energy, and transitioning subsurface energy from high carbon as it is now to low carbon and carbon free is a challenge, but it involves some of the same tools that the high carbon world has used for a long time.
Great, thank you.
Also, the other aspect is, I think, is very important to look at this holistically from the life cycle point of view, from all the risk that requires to be assessed and then mitigate, right? And you're right, most of the projects requires the deep integrated type of studies, right? That before we start to even drill the well, to do the better resource assessment, we need technology for that, to find this resource, to understand the boundary of this resource, right? And then how we are going to deal with all these environmental and technical and financial compact, right? Components, sorry. So, and in the research side, I think there is still a lot of way that we need to look at the data integration, using the data and make a decision. Our modeling technologies and tools needs to be improved, right? To predict and measure the data, predict in your model, calibrate and validate your model. I think this is a process that needs to be more established in geothermal. In oil and gas, some operators, they have a huge attention to this. Some operators no, but for geothermal, it's expensive, right? And if we fail because of all the upfront costs, right? And the limited funding that we have, if the first well is dry, the project is bankrupt. We cannot drill the second well. So how we can better bring the science and engineering thinking, right? Before we even plan the geothermal project.
This has brought us to the end of our panel discussion. But before I wrap up, there's one thing I want to say in regards to diversity. And I actually saw it on a YouTube video, so it's not from my perspective, but it was an interesting perspective in regards to diversity. So suppose you have a company and there's 10% diversity in that company. If that diversity is in one particular department or branch, and it's not spread out within the company, there isn't that much diversity. So that's just something to think about. But I just want to say that thank you to the panelists and thank you to the audience for your questions and insights and your time. And I hope to continue doing more sessions like this. And please check out the Wing booth in the expo hall and get your memorabilia stuff. Thank you. All right, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.